Hello, everyone. My name is Yaman, and I provide daily updates on Tesla, markets, and technology. Let's get started. Markets are mixed today. Dow Jones is higher by 0.8%. NASDAQ is down 0.7%. S&P 500 is flat. Russell 2000 is up 1.2%. Oil is up 1% today at $66 per barrel. The yield curve is up a few basis points. We're going to get into why. And you can see S&P Global Manufacturing PMI for June came in at 53, similar level as the last month. Construction spending was lower in May. ISM Manufacturing Index for June came in at 49, as expected, slightly higher than prior, but still below 50. And JOLTS came in much higher than expected. Job openings came in much higher than expected. This figure can be volatile from month to month. We'll see what happens next. Let's go into the S&P 500 heat map. Any questions, comments, please let me know, and I'll try to get into everything. NVIDIA is down 3%. Broadcom is down 3%. AMD is down 3.5%. Tesla is down 4.4% today. Meta is down 2.5%. Netflix is down 3.4%. So a lot of tech companies are down. Palantir is down 4%. Everything else is pretty high. So I'm not sure what's going on with the tech stock today, but let's see if we can get some information out of it. S&P 500 NASDAQ edged lower on cautious Fed Trump tax bill in focus. The S&P 500 NASDAQ indices inched down on Tuesday as Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell stayed cautious on interest rate cuts, and investors watched a Senate voting marathon on U.S. President Trump's tax cut and spending bill. The blue chip Dow gained and was just about 746 points away from its all-time high touched in December. The day's moves for the S&P 500 and NASDAQ come after the indices posted a record closing highs on Monday, capping their best quarter in over a year as hopes for more trade deals and possible rate cuts supported sentiment. Powell, which we're going to talk about later, reiterated the U.S. central bank plans to wait and learn more about the impact of tariffs on inflation before lowering interest rates, again setting aside Trump's demands for immediate and deep rate cuts. The top policymaker has been facing harsh criticism from Trump to ease monetary policy. The fate of Trump's one big beautiful bill was also in focus as U.S. senators we're going to talk about that later as well. Republican majorities struggled to pass the bill, exemplifies deep divisions within the party over debt. The bill aims to partly cover the cost of the tax reductions with cuts to Medicaid and some food assistance programs for low-income Americans. Trump said he was open to moving the July 4th deadline he gave fellow Republicans in the Senate to get behind the bill, while Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said he expects Senate to pass. This passed already, so we're going to dig into that recent news anyway. Data showed job openings increased unexpectedly in May, suggesting labor market resilience despite trade and economic uncertainties. Yeah, I mean, unless we see a labor market breakdown, I don't think the Fed will cut anytime soon. Money markets are pricing a 21% likelihood for a July rate cut and see about 65% worth of cuts, 65 base points worth of cuts by the end of this year. Unlikely. AMC dropped 6.5% after the theater chain operator said it would cut its debt by converting at least $143 million in exchangeable bonds into shares. Shares of U.S.-based casino operators rose after Macau reported a rise in June gambling revenue. Okay. Let's move on to a little bit deeper on the Senate. U.S. Senate passes Trump's sweeping tax bill, cut and spending bill, and sends to the House. So let's look into details. This also is important for Tesla, as you'll see later. The Republican-controlled U.S. Senate passed President Trump's tax and spending bill on Tuesday, signing off a massive package that would enshrine many of his top priorities into law, while adding $3.3 trillion to the national debt. The bill now heads back to the House of Reps for final approval. Trump has pushed lawmakers to get it to his desk to sign into law by the July 4th Independence Day holiday. Trump's Republicans have had to navigate a narrow path while shepherding the 940-page bill through a Congress that they control by the slimmest of margins. With Democrats lined up in opposition, Republicans have had only 3 votes to spare in both the House and Senate as they wrangled over specific tax breaks and healthcare policies that could reshape entire industries and leave millions of people uninsured. Yet they have managed to stay largely unified so far. Only 3 of the Senate's 53 Republicans joined with Democrats to vote against the package, which passed 51 to 50 after Vice President J.D. Vance cast a tie-breaking vote. The vote in the House, where Republicans hold a 220 to 212 majority, is likely to be close as well. An initial version passed only 2 votes to spare in May, and several Republicans in that chamber have said they do not support the version that has emerged from the Senate, which the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office estimates will add $800 billion more to the national debt than the House version. Interesting. The House Freedom Caucus, a group of hardline conservatives who repeatedly threaten to withhold their support from the tax bill, is pushing for more spending cuts than what the Senate offered. The Senate's version adds $651 billion to the deficit, and that's more before interest costs, which nearly double the total, the caucus posted online on Monday. That's not fiscal responsibility. It's not what we agreed to, they say. A group of more moderate House Republicans, especially those who represent lower-income areas, object to the steeper Medicaid cuts in the Senate's plan. I will not support a final bill that eliminates vital funding streams our hospitals rely on, Representative David Vallejo, a California Republican, said during the weekend debate. Still, House Republicans are likely to face enormous pressure to fall in line from Trump in the days to come. The One Big Beautiful Bill Act would make permanent Trump's 2017 business and personal income tax cuts, which are due to expire at the end of this year, and dole out new tax breaks for tipped income, overtime, and seniors that he promised during the 2024 election. It provides tens of billions of dollars for Trump's immigration crackdown and would repeal many Democratic President Joe Biden's green energy incentives. The bill would also tighten eligibility for food and healthy safety net programs, which nonpartisan analysts say would effectively reduce income for poorer Americans who would have paid more for those costs. The CBO estimates the latest version of the bill would add $3.3 trillion to the $36 trillion debt pile that increased that effectively serves as a wealth transfer from younger to older Americans, nonpartisan analysts say, and as it will slow economic growth, raise borrowing costs, and crowd out government spending in the decades to come. Speculative. The bill also would raise the nation's borrowing limit by $5 trillion, postponing the prospect of a debt default this summer that would roil global markets. Republicans rejected the cost estimate generated by the CBO's long-standing methodology. Nonetheless, foreign bond investors see incentives to diversify out of U.S. Treasuries as deficits deepen. Speculative. Republicans say the bill will help families and small businesses and put benefit programs like Medicaid on a more sustainable path, and they have broadly agreed on this main contours. But they have struggled to agree on the Medicaid funding mechanism and a tax break for state and local tax payments that is a top priority for a handful of House Republicans from high-tax states, including New York, New Jersey, and California. Others worry that a crackdown on a funding mechanism for the Medicaid health program could lead to service cutbacks in rural areas. Some of the party's right flank, meanwhile, have pushed for deeper Medicare cuts to lessen its budgetary impact. Trump has signaled out those Republicans dissenters on his Truth Social network and excluded them from White House events, and few have been willing to defy him since he returned to office in January. Senator Tom Tillis of North Carolina, one of the 3 Republicans who voted against the bill, said on Sunday he would not run for re-election next year. Interesting. Republicans ignore debt worry as they push forward on Trump tax cut bill. I think we covered this pretty well at this point. A little bit of color on Moody's. Let's see. President Trump pushed at 3.3 on national debt, etc. Instead, they argue extended tax cut signed law would be worse, etc. Independent analysts and investors said the approach, which follows years of growing government debt under both parties, threatens to erode country's fiscal health and further sap confidence in financial markets, already shaken by Moody's move in May to strip the U.S. of its top-tier AAA rating. Okay. They effectively moving the goalposts and making it much easier to run these incredible deficits ad infinitum, said the chief investment strategist at Global Bonds, PGI, and Fixed Income. Okay. All right. I think we covered the rest of it. Moving on. Trump tariffs. Trump pursues mini trade deals as tariff deadline nears. President Trump's team is no longer aiming for big trade deals with many countries, according to a report in the Financial Times on Tuesday. Instead, they are trying to make smaller, quick agreements before July 9, when Trump plans to bring back his toughest tariffs. These mini deals would help countries avoid those harsh levies, but partners would still face existing tariffs while talks continue. Talks continue to take place, and Trump is still threatening new tariffs on key sectors like cars, steel, and aluminum. Trump's self-imposed July 9 deadline, when Trump's pause on his sweeping April duty expires, fast approaching, with the president and top administration officials providing mixed signals on his malleability while countries race to finalize talks. Trump said on Sunday that he didn't think he'd need to extend that deadline, while Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent on Monday warned reluctant countries that a return to steep Liberation Day tariff looms. In another sign on Monday that the president was moving forward on his threat to send letters to countries rather than waiting to finalize interim deals, Trump posted on Truth Social that he would be sending Japan a letter with a new tariff rate, citing an unwillingness by the country to accept U.S. rice exports. Meanwhile, the European Union signaled it was willing to accept a 10% universal tariff on many of its exports, but is seeking exemptions for pharmaceuticals, alcohol, semiconductors, and commercial aircraft as part of a trade deal, Bloomberg reported. The EU is also seeking quotas and exemptions to lower duties on autos, steel, and aluminum, the report. What else is left? On the North American front, Canada scrapped its digital services tax on U.S. technology companies such as Apple, Amazon, and Alphabet late on Sunday, just hours before it was set to start. The White House said trade talks between the two countries had resumed after Trump threatened to cut trade talks. U.S. manufacturing mired in weakness as tariffs bite. U.S. manufacturing remained weak in June. New orders were low and input costs went up slightly. This shows Trump's tariffs on imports are still making it hard for businesses to plan. You can see the details of the PMI right here. Okay, manufacturing accounts for 10% of the economy. A lot of jobs, though, so that's part of the reason why it's important. Okay, Powell reiterates Fed will wait for more data before cutting rates. Let's switch to Fed, and then we're going to switch to Tesla after that. Oh, Zachary, thank you so much. Thank you, Zachary Pernolinski, for Get Coffee on Me. You're the best strike talk. Thank you. I appreciate the tip on YouTube. Powell reiterates Fed will wait for more data before cutting rates. U.S. Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell on Tuesday reiterated the U.S. Central Bank plans to wait and learn more about the impact of tariffs on inflation before lowering interest rates, again setting aside President Trump's demands for immediate and deep rate cuts. We're simply taking some time, Powell said at a central bank gathering in Portugal, a day after Trump sent him a handwritten missive noting how low other central banks had cut rates and suggesting the U.S. needed to move. As long as the U.S. economy is in solid shape, we think that the prudent thing to do is to wait and learn more and see what those effects might be. I agree. Yet Powell also declined to rule out a possible rate cut at the Fed's upcoming July 29-30 meeting. I don't think that's what he meant, but prompting investors to slightly boost the possibility of reduction at that session and shifting focus to a jobs report to be issued on Thursday and new inflation data coming in 2 weeks, both covering the month of June. Powell noted that a majority of Fed officials in recent projections do expect to lower the benchmark interest rate later this year and are closely attuned to whether inflation increases this summer as policymakers and many economists expect. It's going to depend on data. We're going to meeting by meeting, Powell said. I wouldn't take any meeting off the table or put it directly on the table. It's going to depend on how the data evolve. July 9, in addition to the deadline, later this week we have the employment data. Next week we have the inflation data. It would be ridiculous for Powell to commit to something right now. The Fed is facing complicated moments, weighing sometimes, not to mention the budget discussions and also the July 9 deadline that we were just talking about. So to even ask that question to Powell is crazy. The Fed is facing a complicated moment, weighing sometimes conflicting data that could leave officials faced with both rising unemployment and rising inflation, the worst of both worlds for a central bank tasked with maintaining both stable prices and maximum employment. Uncertainty over trade and other administration policies has left businesses also unsure of what to do. And the Fed decision making has been under virtually daily assault from a president eager to install his own chair when Powell leaves the Fed top job next May. At the Sintra Gathering, an annual forum sponsored by the European Central Bank and akin to the Fed's own yearly gathering at Jackson Hole, Wyoming, Powell got at least a momentary reprieve. Asked about Trump's barrage of insults, Powell commented that the Fed was focused 100% on its inflation jobs target, drew applause from the audience and from the heads of the ECB, the Bank of England, and other central banks who joined him on stage for a panel discussion. Central bank independence from the lobbying of elected officials, at least in the setting of interest rates, is considered key to keeping inflation under control. Powell said his message to whomever Trump chooses to succeed him in a little over 10 months would be, we're trying to deliver macro stability, financial stability, economic stability for the benefit of all people. If we're going to do that successfully, we need to do it in a completely non-political way, which means we don't take sides. We don't play one side against the other. It remains unclear how long the Fed may have to wait to gain the clarity it needs to resume reducing interest rates. The central bank cut steadily last year, beginning in September, something Trump alleges was politically motivated, but stopped in December after lowering the benchmark rate for a full percentage point to the current 4.25% and 4.5% range. Powell has made no secret of why. Quote, in effect, we went on hold when we saw the size of the tariffs, and essentially, all inflation forecasts for the US went up materially as a consequence, end quote, Powell said, which makes sense. The central bank targets inflation of 2%, and recent readings remain above that level now for the fourth year running following a spike in price during the COVID-19 pandemic. While officials are open to lowering rates if inflation proves lower than expected or the job market weakens, Powell said there's nothing in the data so far indicating a need to move fast or soon. Investors had increased the estimated probability of a July rate cut to about 1 in 4 after Powell didn't explicitly rule it out. That drove chances back down to close to 1 in 5 after data on US job openings came in stronger than expected. If you look at the economy, growth has been solid, the labor market is solid, and still at historically low levels of unemployment, Powell said. It's not an economy that feels like it's suffering from a very tight monetary policy. I agree. Now, on the other hand, Eurozone inflation hits 2% target, raising chance of ECB rate hold. Inflation in the Eurozone crept up in June, hitting the European Central Bank's target and raising expectations that policymakers will leave the key interest rate unchanged later this month. Consumer prices were 2.0% higher than the same month last year, up from the 1.9% of May, statistics agency Eurostat said Tuesday, matching expectations from economists polled by the Wall Street Journal. Okay. Now, switching to automotive industry, U.S. auto sales lose steam after tariff-induced shopping spree. U.S. auto sales are losing momentum after springtime surge fueled by shoppers racing to buy cars before Trump's auto tariffs drove up prices. Ford's second quarter sales jumped 14%, helped by its employee pricing for everyone discount program, though it saw the pace of growth moderate last month. Hyundai said deliveries rose 10% in the second quarter, with a 3% gain in June after sales soared 19% in April. Toyota, April through June period rose 7% despite volumes being essentially flat last month. Quote, we did have a lot of pull forward business. I think the whole industry did from late March into early May, said David Christ, the head of Toyota brand sales in the US. The sales pace returned to what I call more normal, he told reporters after a briefing on Tuesday. Shoppers rushed to showrooms earlier this year as beating tariff-induced price increases became a motivation to buy, pushing up second quarter sales an estimated 2.5% from the prior year period. Okay. Some automakers are now seeing consumers retreat. Subaru June deliveries dropped 16%, while Kia fell 3%, limiting South Korean car makers. Total second quarter gain to 5%. Nissan sales fell 6.5% in the most recent 3 months. Okay. The annual automotive selling rate likely fell to 15 million in June, the slowest pace in the last 12 months. Interesting. Check it out. The annual automotive selling rate likely fell to 15 million in June, slowest pace in the last 12 months from 17.6 million in April, as consumers grow cautious about big ticket purchases over worries about the economy. With already high car prices expected to rise further as automakers manage billions of dollars in tariff costs, it may only get worse from here. The party is over, Jonathan Smoke, chief economist for researcher Cox Automotive, said in an interview. It's clearly slowing. Wow. It's because of affordability getting worse and forcing what we think will be the production declines to keep supply in balance. I agree. This is exactly my take on Tesla specifically. Tomorrow, Tesla is going to announce production delivery numbers. I expect somewhere around 350,000 deliveries. Notably, Troy is a little higher than that, and James Catt is much lower than that. He's around 335,000. And if it comes at 335,000, I mean, that would be pretty wild. I think if James Catt is right on his call, that he's not seeing any growth anywhere in the world for Tesla sales, if he comes at 335, I mean, I really respect the guy, but I think my respect will increase even higher because that's a hell of a call. All right, I do expect production slowdowns for the industry and for Tesla, especially in China for Tesla. Smoke sees the annualized month rate of U.S. auto sales sticking around 15 million in the second half of the year, down from 16.3 million in the first 6 months of 2025. Last year, Americans purchased roughly 16 million cars on light trucks. Yeah. All right. Now Tesla. Any questions, comments? Thanks again, Zachary, for your tip. Any questions, comments, you may leave it in the chat or below the video after the live stream. Tesla stock sinks as Trump threatens to cut subsidies across Musk's sprawling enterprise. Tesla sank 7% Tuesday as the feud between CEO Elon Musk and President Trump reignited overnight, with the president once again threatening to cut government subsidies across Elon's businesses, including Tesla and SpaceX. Elon may get more subsidy than any human being in history by far. And without subsidies, Elon would probably have to close up shop and head back to home to South Africa, Trump wrote on a social media platform, Truth Social, early Monday. No more rocket launches, satellites, or electric car production, and our country would save a fortune, Trump added. Perhaps we should have Doge take a good hard look. Big money to be saved, in all caps. The threats followed Musk's criticism of Trump's big, beautiful tax and spending bill over the weekend, after the Senate advanced the bill with last-minute changes that would eliminate electric vehicle tax credits, which benefit Tesla customers earlier than expected and add $1 trillion to the bill's original price tag. Ending the EV credit would cut an estimated $1.2 billion from Tesla's annual profit. Meanwhile, SpaceX has received more than $21 billion in federal contracts, according to U.S. spending data. In one of his series of posts on his own platform, X, Musk called the bill utterly insane and destructive, with handouts to industries of the past while severely damaging industries of the future. Musk's critiques continued into the trading week, which the tech mogul proposing the formation of a new political party, not going to happen, for the second time last month if the bill passes. Tesla shares dropped 2% on Monday as the Senate began voting on the amendments to the bill in what's called a vote-a-rama, which dragged into Tuesday morning. Late Monday night, Musk posted an AI-generated image of Pinocchio with the word liar stamped across it, writing, anyone who campaigned on the promise of reducing spending but continues to vote on the biggest debt ceiling increase in history will see their face on this poster in the primary next year. I mean, frankly, I think Trump's support for a politician, there's no proof that there's net positive impact from that. And we saw in Germany elections and also in Wisconsin that he may actually have a negative impact on the person he's trying to support in politics. Trump's Truth Social post threatening subsidies on Musk's empire followed just a few hours later. Elon Musk knew long before he strongly endorsed me for president that I was strongly against the EV mandate, the president wrote. The Barbs revived a feud between the world's two most powerful men in early June that raised more than $150 billion in value in Tesla in a single day. Let's dig into, there's an interesting article here on Elon Musk is a billionaire federal welfare vampire. Elon Musk is a billionaire federal welfare vampire. That's a mouthful. Elon Musk Doge chainsaws through federal agency with budget and staff cuts. Tesla and SpaceX cornerstones of Musk's fabulous wealth continue to benefit from public money. They probably wouldn't have succeeded without it, says the author. This is a Forbes article. Elon Musk, the South African-born billionaire, overseeing President Trump's massive and haphazard effort to hack down government spending, is among the largest beneficiaries of federal government support ever. His empire was built on it. In the past 15 years alone, Tesla, Musk's $1.1 trillion company, and SpaceX, his $350 billion valuation company, have sucked in a stunning $30 billion in public dollars. Meanwhile, Musk's personal wealth ballooned to the point of engorgement, swelling from $2 billion in 2012 to over $400 billion in December. He's now worth $393 billion. Prior to 13 years ago, the world's richest person wasn't even a billionaire. Republican presidential candidate Mitt Romney labeled Musk a crony capitalist. In 2012, the long-term financial goodies his companies have received bring to mind another Republican moniker for someone living off public money. In the ensuing years, his companies have developed a symbiotic relationship with federal programs, turning him into more of a vampire. Those include SpaceX rocket launches, satellite deliveries, ferrying astronauts, and supplies to the International Space Station, and Starlink services have won $22 billion in Defense Department and NASA contracts, according to President Grant Shotwell, though a review of publicly available data puts the tally at $20 billion. At least $4 billion of the $11.7 billion of regulatory credits Tesla has sold since 2008 were from sales to automakers needing to comply with the U.S. corporate average fuel economy rules. A $465 million of federal loan guarantee for Tesla in 2009 helped then struggling startup secure its first factory, a gift from Toyota. I don't think that's the right word choice here, but Tesla's charging network qualified for at least $31 million in federal funds under a program Trump recently canceled. Tesla buyers have been the top beneficiaries of $7,500 tax credits for EVs, booking about $4 billion since the Obama era. Those too are likely going away under Trump. Tesla was briefly identified as being in the run for a $400 million contract to supply armored electric vehicles for the State Department before the agency suspended that plan. As context, Doge's move fast and break government things effort, which has so far resulted in an impossible to verify claim of $55 billion in federal spending cuts and the firing of at least 200,000 government workers, including FAA staff and specialists overseeing nuclear weapons safety or trying to stop an avian flu pandemic, many of whom were hastily unfired. Musk's decades-long reliance on government funds to grow and enrich his own companies is a bit dissonant. Norman Eisen, a senior fellow at the left-leaning Brookings Institution, who's involved in a suit filed on behalf of federal employees to block Doge from carrying out actions they believe violate the Constitution, thinks it's appalling. Quote, the staggering level of support Mr. Musk's companies have received from the federal government over the years makes the damage that he's doing to that government an act of rank hypocrisy, Eisen told Forbes. Even worse, leaning forward, the continued relationship between his commercial enterprises and the U.S. government creates a set of some of the most profound conflict questions we've seen in our history, end quote. I agree. Musk didn't immediately respond to a request for comment on the matter. Doge doesn't have an identified public spokesperson. As for concerns regarding conflicts of interest between Elon Musk and Doge, President Trump has stated he will not allow conflicts, and Elon himself has committed to recusing himself from potential conflicts, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said in an emailed statement. Musk has honed an image as a risk-taking entrepreneur, arguably the most successful of the 21st century so far. Yet despite, I don't know, I think Jansen is above him. Yet despite his ideas and efforts, his business empire wouldn't have achieved its current scale without robust federal support. Federal funds helped Tesla and SpaceX find their footing when they were fledgling, unproven startups over 15 years ago. In the case of Tesla, which narrowly avoided bankruptcy filing in late 2008, an Advanced Technology Vehicle Manufacturing, or ATVM, a loan from Energy Department, proved to be a lifeline. It helped it set up the company's first factory faster and at a lower cost, owing to a lower interest rate than if it had relied solely on private funds. That allowed production of its breakthrough Model S sedan to start on time in 2012, putting Tesla on course for future success. And SpaceX, which had just begun putting its rocket into orbit in 2008 after multiple failures, wouldn't have become NASA's top provider of cargo and crew launches had the company not won a game-changing $1.6 billion contract that year. Both companies were shaky bets, but the government's gamble paid off. Tesla is now the world's most valuable automaker with a $1.16 trillion market cap. SpaceX is estimated to be $350 billion and has been dubbed the world's most valuable private startup. As a result, it's highly likely that Musk's vast wealth, which Forbes estimates $393 billion, based on his holdings in those companies, wouldn't have been possible without the kind of federal programs Doge and Trump are now eliminating. For decades, reining in government spending and improving efficiency have been bipartisan concerns. And though there have been numerous initiatives to address them, the problem only seems to worsen with time. The big difference under Trump is that for the first time in US history, the effort to find savings has been entirely outsourced to a billionaire entrepreneur. Aside from Trump's efforts to eliminate any future disbursements of grants and funding created by Inflation Reduction Act and bipartisan infrastructure law that Biden enacted, potentially including $4 billion in federal grants to California's high-speed rail project, Musk's Doge team is slashing staff and funds across the board at federal agencies. And so far, there's no clear indication that much thought has gone into who and what is being cut. The effort has so far developed a reputation for taking the shoot first, ask questions later approach Musk deployed when he bought Twitter in 2022 and slashed 80% of its workers. In its first few weeks, aside from embarrassing, poorly thought out reduction of staff cuts, Doge has been criticized for halting NIH research grants that threaten to slow medical breakthroughs, eliminating most of the budget and staffing for USAID, ending food and medical supplies to developing nations, killing the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, cutting IRS staff as tax season ramps up, eliminating seasonal staff at national parks, and potentially eliminating Department of Education, including cuts to vital funds that go into country's poorest school districts. This is a true statement right here. No one voted for Elon Musk. It's true. But even Trump fans like Kash Patel, who's likely to win Senate approval as the next director of the FBI, have pointed out how much Musk benefits from federal contracts. Referencing SpaceX's Starlink service in a Fox News interview in December 2021, he said, "We're all paying for it. This is why he's so rich." We're seeing the establishment of American oligarchy, and that should be profoundly concerning to Americans. While the billionaire has been the public face of Doge and praised for his efforts by Trump, a federal attorney this week claimed Musk is not technically in charge of cost-cutting projects and has no actual authority to make government decisions himself. His status is as an unpaid special government employee. But because Musk is a government contractor via SpaceX, the unfettered access Doge has to databases at agencies, including the Treasury Department, Social Security, IRS, and Defense Department, are rattling nerves. How can they let this guy in the front door where all the contracts are when he's a contractor? Retired U.S. Army Lieutenant General Russell Honore told Forbes. I think that has to be illegal. Trump staffers have also said they're relying on Musk to self-identify any potential conflicts. But that's far from satisfactory for Eisen, a government ethics specialist in the Obama administration and a co-counsel for the House Judiciary Committee in Trump's first impeachment. We don't know the answers, despite his proclamation of transparency, to questions like what precautions have been taken when he's working on a particular matter that he has no personal financial interest that's related to it, he said. The implications of Doge's efforts are far from clear, though they're resulting in painful reductions for many agencies that may soon be felt for larger numbers of Americans, especially lower-income people, as well as programs run by cities, states, and schools that rely on federal funding. So far, Congress, which created all those programs and approved funding in the past, hasn't intervened. The irony that a billionaire who's received billions of dollars from government programs like Musk, who also gave at least $200 million to help get Trump elected in 2024, is now slashing federal agencies with dubious legal authority is deeply troubling, said Eisen, a past ambassador to the Czech Republic. When you have magnets, including those who have benefited from government regress in the past, who support a candidate to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars, and then the candidate is successful and puts them in a position to make government decisions that raise these kinds of conflict questions, he said. We have a word for that. It's oligarch. We're seeing the establishment of an American oligarchy, and that should be profoundly concerning to Americans. All right. On that note, thanks again, Zachary, for the tip, and I will chat with you all next time. Take care.